that would take place if nothing else was done. Now, spiritual intervention, attitudinal changes, divine interventions on a rare occasion, things like that, it is typical that the plane will still crash, but the cushioning effect, the more positive effect, could very well be that as opposed to 500 people on board the plane, that only 100 and some people would die. A few others would most unfortunately be burned and so on, but the positive thing would be more than 130 people would walk off that plane. So that's a better thing. And as judgmentally, we usually think that that's a cushioning effect and that's a better than bad situation. So the better than bad situation was, in this case, that the series of tests were a precognition, and by the law of conservation, for lack of a better phrase, it had to take place, right? And I confused a few people by saying the series in Canada will not take place, but ultimately the series of cruise missile tests will have to take place. Now, because of the delay tactics and many other things, it was disallowed ultimately for those planes to fly into Canada. There was some confusion about the exact location. I made a mistake in the phraseology or terminology of the first night I spoke about this. I said, well, I'm getting confused and I'm not sure if it's a cold lake or if it's Loon Lake in Canada. But it's either a cold lake with a loon on it or it's Loon Lake that it's very cold. And the problem was a mixture of, because as I said that on October 13th, I was clairvoyantly seeing what the lake looked like, which was not froze over, but it was cold, and in fact, there was a great American loon, beautiful bird, in the middle of the lake. So at that time, I was seeing the lake as it was at that hour.
In December?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
No,
I'm sorry. On October 13th at 3:15 in the morning.
you were seeing it as it was October 13th?
Yes. As the lake was on October 13th, I was seeing it
Okay.
clairvoyantly from Connecticut. Confusing that with December 17th and part of the projected series of test runs up there, which would run into the cold weather, the lake was froze over. And by the way, the name of the lake was Cold Lake. So you can see how that, you can get caught up in the words. So that was denied. I'm losing track of the time frame, but let me say the next year or so, because this has to fit in properly within a 3.5 year period of time. In that 3.5 year period of time, the test series, these military officials, before they were policed and discovered, they then tried a second thing of having the test series put into the Utah-Nevada desert. And pretty much there's 3 or 4 states geographically that come together there. And that's pretty well the center of what I'm talking about. I'm not recalling the name of the place. It's not White Sands. But anyway, out that way. In the middle of the desert there's another bombing range. And they decided, well, it's not the same tundra and as good as going to the Arctic Circle, but at least it's legal and we can get away with it, so we can sell these cruise missiles. So the test series started to take place, and I advertised enough information at talks at Marianne Ayana Cohn's hairdressing salon, at priesthood meetings, at conferences, and so on, and advertising to many people, and it turns out, thank God, enough people, that a series of events would be taking place. And I mean, do you recall any of that? Was that I was saying that?
Vaguely, not the time, but just the story.
All right, because, what I was saying is that we have the capability of love bombing. And in other words, can you telekinetically burst a missile and fire? No, you can't. I can't individually. Even a group of people that are very intensive regarding telekinetic manipulation does not have the capability of destroying a metallic object. So what do we have the capability of doing? I came up with a phrase with the help from some people of love bombing. Now I thought love bombing, bombing, and somebody said, well, you could call it the same thing, but call it love bombing, balming. And so in other words, that combination of word phrase would mean that with extraordinary, and I have to say, compared to average people, most people watching this videotape, it would require of their normal capabilities extraordinary capabilities. And they would require a great deal of effort and energy, mostly in terms of spiritual energy, for the purposes of love bombing those cruise missiles. It had to be with an attitude of love. And I want to emphasize this, that it had to be with a positive attitude. If you had an attitude that you're going to destroy a bad, nasty missile, forget it, it won't work. If you had the attitude that you're going to do a good and righteous and just thing for humanity and the big blue marble, meaning Mother Earth, and with a positive attitude of truly loving the magnificence of this technological marvel, the Tomahawk cruise missile, and the 7 computers on board, and the phenomenal, I'm rambling on with a bunch of words, then feasibly you could, if given an idea of the exact time, the exact location, what I call loci, and with a proper attitude and so on, and of course the timing and everything had to be exactly precise. I mean, within a millisecond. And if that cruise missile be in flight and functioning, and we could focus spiritually on the solid state circuitry of any one chip or solid state circuit of in any of the 7 computers on board, and as they'll visualize and see and love the functioning of the electronics of it all, and then as though you or I were to actually be there, or collectively we all will be there, and watch the next electron coming towards you and be in its way, not in its way like in harm's way or anything, but sort of become part of it, that would positively, in a positive manner, positively affect that electron. It would be telekinetically effective. Now, to change this attitude and everything else so I can describe to you easier, what effect would that have in a computer? Well, the effect would be what's called a glitch. And those theoretically or conceivably, it could create a genuine glitch in one chip with solid state circuitry in any one computer. If that takes place in or on a cruise missile, that will immediately be acted and reacted upon the other 6 computers, and it will down all 7 computers. In other words, it's a fail-safe system, they say. I love that phrase. Fail-safe system that one checks on the other. So if there's a glitch in one of the computers, the missile will slow down, stop, or ultimately fall out of the air or not function as it was pre-programmed to do.
Now, these particular missiles that you're talking about, you know, in all we've heard in the last couple of weeks about the anti-missiles, the ones that are stopping the Scud missiles.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be 2 kinds of missiles. One is the one that is going to do the damage, and one is the one that's going to intercept. So this was a type of missile that would...
Right. A Tomahawk cruise missile is a pre-programmed missile that can be launched from, and I'll be willing to even throw in something that isn't quite advertised right now, but there is what's called well, let me just say that they're a very large, heavy missile, and they require a large B-52 bomber to launch. And most recently, there has been a launch from a submarine in the Persian Gulf, the identical type cruise missile, and it functioned perfectly. They also can be launched from a ship with a special launching pad. Because of their size and weight and so on, they have never been able to be carried by fighter planes or smaller jets and so on. And I've gotten a report most recently that that they have the capability, which I am not sure if I even believe. I want to see it to believe it. That can be launched from a 1,500 mile an hour fighter type jet. I'm sure that it's designed just for that purpose. Right. So these missiles are designed to travel at around 600 miles an hour for a distance of 600 miles, about maximum, roughly speaking. And they have the geography within feet. In other words, in height, they know every hill, every major thing in the way, and they have the entire Earth's surface memorized in their computers. They can be carried to a different site, launched, and the missile will instantly recognize itself as to where it is in the world, and it will have the program as to where they wish it to go, and it can fly around buildings, around trees, over hills, under bridges if necessary, and of course focus on the target within a matter of inches. So a phenomenally technologically advanced missile. And it is the type that can carry conventional warhead or any type of warhead, including very high-powered nuclear bombs, nuclear capability.
So for the purpose,
It's also improbable that an anti-missile as exists today, such as the typical Patriot missile, which is an anti-missile missile, it is the highest of improbabilities that an anti-missile missile can shoot it down. All right, now there's one of our Patriot missiles would be very unlikely to be able to stop a cruise missile in flight. I would say it's impossible. Well, you have to be careful saying those words. It's not impossible, but it isn't going to happen.
so for the purposes of this video, your precognition, even without your thinking you could possibly have this capability of reaching anybody, one thing after another led into the fact that now today, in the middle of this war, Hussein does not have the capabilities of having this type of a weapon.
Yes, and even more ironic than that, if you can be at all comfortable with the righteousness of the military intervention and what we, the United States, are participating in the Allied forces, you certainly are aware that some of the very surgical, accurately detailed strikes through windows and over ledges and so on are being carried out by United States Tomahawk cruise missiles. And isn't it ironic that we are using them righteously to go against Saddam Hussein and his military machine, instead of having Saddam Hussein launch them outwardly to the Allied forces with nuclear devices and total chaos and such destruction on the earth that the earth would not be the same. And in a very short period of time would not sustain normal life. In other words, he would have had enough nuclear capability to change life forms. In other words, there would be a residual gamma radiation effect from fallout and so on, and destruction of chemicals and plants and the human condition, that it would not have necessarily been the so-called Holocaust, but it would have created enough gamma radiation in the atmosphere that practically everybody would be dying from cancers from radiation.
So now let's really, I'm better with it now since I talked to you, but I know a lot of the audience, a lot of the people who are watching are probably coming from where I have come from all my life, that we ought to be able to pray away this situation without military intervention and loss of life. You know, you look at the television and you see people marching for peace. I've always been out there. That's where my heart is. You know, how can we justify the killing? And you and I had a conversation when this all broke out, and I said to you, Tom, how can you be loving and kill at the same time?
How'd I do? What did I say?
Well, what you
Yeah.
said to me, basically, you made it very simplistic in saying, you know, if you were sitting on this side of the room and you had a baby and a playpen on the other side of the room, and a man walked in with a knife and was headed toward your baby, you could lovingly probably blow the man away. That in having a reverence for life, there are times when you have to have a reverence to protect it, rather than
You know,
just
also
try to
another
pray it
phrase
away.
that is so popular with so many people, and that I have talked about and I have declared that we are in the onset of the New Age. Now, to a lot of people, the New Age is all lovey-dovey, flowers and stuff like that. You hug people, you don't hit people. And I'm saying that flippantly on purpose just to get out. Those people understand what I'm saying by those few words. And I agree with that. And I declared that myself. I participated in a lot of things regarding that. Usually in the same conversation, I would say that with the onset of this new age that we're into right now, there is also in the transitional state extraordinary chaos and chaotic chaos, meaning in our individual lives, spousal relationships is a perfect example. People having a very good employment with good pay and good benefits and realizing I'm lost. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I have been ignoring my spiritual work and giving up that employment and actually going broke, or, you know, because often we're so materialistic, we think that money is security. And they're finding their security in often a very chaotic transition. They're finding that security in their spiritual work. Now, the transitional state for that person with the employment problem is that they're going to lose all their money, might even lose their domicile, their house, and the chaos that creates. Well, on a worldwide scale and so on, worldwide, culturally, nationally, by armies, by societies, by religions, by cultures, I think I repeated that, cultures, there is also on that scale cultural changes. And I'm saying cultural changes even if it be your religiosity. Those from a cultural change, you might enhance, change, or deny your religiosity, your religion. Politically, you might change your politics in a chaotic way by cultural conditioning. The cultural conditioning is on the onset or the recognition of this hypothetical new age. In that capacity, we have the polarization of the materialistic ego world, the greed and ego, power, masculine, and I'm saying the spiritual masculine, not that it's all guys, not girls. I know there are many women who have a masculine, dominant, materialistic ego problem. I'm describing characteristics of all of us. No, and all of us have certain characters. I'm talking when it's lopsided, when it's out of balance. And of course, a typical example is most high-ranking politicians. God bless every one of them. Most leaders of country, most multimillionaires. Notice what is the driving force that has put them in the position of clench fist power or monetary power or manipulation power or military power, all these powers, these masculine ego, sometimes malicious and arrogant power positions. Okay, Saddam Hussein is a perfect example of that. What is his motivation? His motivation is ego. His motivation is greed and ego. It's ironic also that right now there is little or nothing being done by most people regarding an attempt and a desire through spiritual work to diffuse the ego of the man Saddam Hussein, the people that are following him and taking great sensationalism and joy of the leadership and the false security of a dominant character, a dominant leader, which again is ego. They're feeding their ego by having this marvelous champion leader.
Well, let's go back to what you were saying about not being able to stop the missile through anger or hatred. There's no way we can stop the greed and ego of Hussein by hating.
That's right. A very good point. I'm jealous now that you thought of it. Very good point. Yes, as a matter of fact. And the people that, in all of their righteousness, and God bless them, with perfectly good intentions, but are saying, gee, I've been to all the peace movements, I pray every night, I do my personal Om Shantis and everything else, but I hate that man. I mean, that is a failure, and be cautious of doing that. I mean, try to love the spiritual essence of that man's soul. That man's soul, through free will and other things, he is this monster. He is this greedy, egotistical man, this leader. With power, potential to do good things, he is doing negative and bad things. He's accumulating materialism, he's feeding his own ego. All right, we understand this well enough.
But there is a spiritual side to him, or the men or women or people that are around him.
Well,
could be reached by the power of prayer.
Yes, and let me put it this way. If this very moment right now, Saddam Hussein, he the man, has an attitudinal change, suddenly realize a near-death experience, a spontaneous spiritual awakening, a love bomb hits him. I mean, should we love that man? Should we love bomb him? I say yes. Can he have an attitudinal change? And within a matter of hours, could he stop all of this destruction, all of this military might, all of this war? I mean, the destruction is already there. As much has been done. That can't be erased or backed up. Some of it can be cured, some of it can't be cured. Or I should say rebuilt and so on. But can he stop and change? The answer is yes. It might require something rather extraordinary. It might require a spontaneous spiritual awakening on his part, suddenly seeing love is the basis for authentic empowerment, as opposed to manipulative, man-made greed, ego, power.
So here we are, 2 weeks or whatever into this war. What do you, putting you on the spot, what do you foresee happening in the next month, 2 months, 6 months?
Well, now we've just talked about the probability, the possibility of an attitudinal change, of a love bombing effect. And you have to know me well enough, and for anybody who has never met me, please know me well enough to know that I often play, I've always disliked the word the devil's advocate. I mean, that's a terrible phrase. But anyway, for the sake of conversation, for the sake of showing, teaching, and telling, I often say things that I personally don't do, that knows my philosophy, my attitude. You would do well to follow me in the middle of the night sometime, or do what I do. In other words, I practice a lot of what I preach. I fervently pray very often with great intensity. As I go places, I do things. I'm not just a talker. And at the same time, I might know precognitively a future event. I am the first one to be aware of and share with anybody that future precognitive, straightforward precognitive, absolute future scenarios are changeable. They're changeable through free will. They're changeable through changing karmic fulfillment and other things that are indescribable. Nothing is absolute. So in future scenarios, I might say something that is precognitive, such as, will this war continue for the next 3 months? As of this date, I will say the highest of probabilities, 99.99%. Probability that this war will continue for 3 months or more. Will we have military intervention in the Middle East a year from now? As things are going as of this moment, the answer to that is honestly yes. That does not mean that the outright war, that offensive type war, will be going on that long. But will there still be military intervention, military intelligence, military presence, intervention? As it stands right now, my answer is yes. Will troops be sent home in less than a year. As things stand right now, the answer is yes on a very large scale. So there's a positive, it's at least looked forward to. And so many people have made this horrendous comparison to a Vietnam. This is not a Vietnam situation. This is nothing at all like Vietnam. Either its onset, its purpose, its motivation, militaristically, governmentally, all the different ways. There's no comparison at all. God bless the horrible situation of Vietnam, and God bless the righteousness, if you will. I want to upgrade the basic difference of this situation in the Middle East right now. Lessons to be learned. There are lessons that are being learned that will allow the cessation of world domination motivated, greedy, arrogant governments, military armies, that the situation right now in the Middle East is a lesson that is being demonstrated and shown that will eliminate immediate future in the next couple of years, few years, of other governments, other armies that have had plans for 10 years or more, 5 years minimum, of invasions of their neighboring countries, world domination in the back of their mind, and militaristically gaining material things, gaining the imperialistic gaining of countries. You know what I'm talking about. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah. Well, yeah. In the last 6 months, maybe, I'm not even sure the time that we talked about this. Of course,
let me interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And let me ask you a question while the videotape is on. Have I talked to you intensively about Israel regarding the near future?
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it at that. It's like a little seed. It's just something. Hopefully, in a couple of months, I'll be able to make another videotape and give a non-future scenario regarding the country Israel, and a future scenario that, with the demonstration, the actuality of the demonstration of what we are accomplishing with the Allied forces. I want to emphasize that too, because this is not the world power United States of America that should and is, whether you like it or not, the world police force. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
But with the United Nations, so that it's not just the United States. Granted, it's our technology that's being shown and bragged about, and that will be the ultimate deterrent for these several other scenarios, that if this continues to move along as it is, and if this, in fact, it's already taken place, that enough demonstration of high technological advanced military might excludes some of these other scenarios from taking place. And they're saying, those individuals are saying, my God, I didn't really know that they had this stuff. We better forget about our plans in the next couple of years. It's not going to work. The United States alone will intervene and put us down. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So don't think that this scenario is righteous or just because we're putting down Saddam Hussein and his invasion of this tiny little speck of land way out of our earsight and eyesight of Kuwait. It's much more than that. It's putting a stop to, militaristically, I'm sorry to say, it's putting a stop to many future scenarios. The delay tactic that I was involved in regarding the denial of Saddam Hussein gaining nuclear deployment capabilities of Tomahawk cruise missiles back several years ago only was an ultimate delay tactic for the last couple of months. As many of you know, Elaine and I went to Germany to visit a military official, and we had a wonderful time. That was toward the end of July. At the end of July, there was information known of a crisis in the Middle East that we now know as Iraq and Kuwait. It was information known then. So this isn't something that really popped up like sometimes the television portrays.
My phone has been ringing off the wall ever since this happened of people that can't get through the Euro Dam. Of people
I'm sorry.
who were taken off guard. They really surprised that all this had happened. And